A belief is what you accept as true, despite not having proof that it actually is. If you had proof, it wouldn't be a belief, it would just be fact, it would just be reality. Hello my loves, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Lorena, I'm a self-concept coach and I support women to shift their self-concept, embody a new state of being sustainably, and step into a new identity that really aligns with whatever it is that you want to call in your life, your authentic soul desires, so that you can manifest anything that you want. Here on this channel, I teach you everything you need to know in order to bridge the gap between who you currently are and who you desire to become. If you like this type of content, then please subscribe for more and switch on the notifications so you don't miss any future videos. And if you like this particular video, then please leave me a like so I know what it is that you do like. And I also invite you to check out the links in the description box below where you can find free resources, for example, masterclasses and a guidebook. And you can also find information how to work with me intimately and how to be coached by me. Today's video is going to be all about changing your beliefs. And of course, we're going to be talking about changing beliefs that you don't need, that are maybe not useful, that are maybe keeping you restricted or limited, so-called limiting beliefs. Now, when I speak about limitation or block, I want to explain to you what I even mean by this. Because the only thing that is really limiting you is your perception, is your belief system. I bet you've seen many people create things in their lives that seem impossible. Maybe they came from backgrounds that led to unexpected results, or their life turned around. Whatever is possible for someone else is also possible for you. We live in a very abundant universe. Everything that feels restrictive is just a thing of perception. Everything that feels limited is just because of how we're using it or how we're seeing it. And addressing these limitations that are in our perception, that are maybe in your mindset, in your belief system, in your subconscious, is very important, because conscious manifestation isn't actually about adding anything new. It's not about getting anything. It's not about making anything happen. It's more about removing all the barriers that currently keep you from experiencing what you want, from becoming who you want to be. So manifestation is about removing everything that's in the way of your desires. In theory, there are no blocks. But through our conditioning, through our experience, and maybe through external messages that we get from other people, from society, from the media, we can really create blocks. So it's still very important to look at. If we just say, oh, there are no blocks, and we stick with that, we're bypassing our true subconscious beliefs. So what I want to share with you today is about the subconscious beliefs, the ones that you're maybe not even aware of, or the ones that you're maybe trying to bypass. The reason it often feels hard to break out of these beliefs, of these limiting or subconscious limiting beliefs, is because we are very attached to our suffering. As humans, we're animals, right? We're animals and we are wired to try and survive. And in order to survive, we tend to look for problems to solve. We don't really look, how can I improve things? How can I make things even better? We look at, how can I ensure that I survive on this planet? And with that, we consciously and unconsciously often look for the thing that is wrong more than the things that are going right. And what that leads to is a real attachment to your suffering, an attachment to your pain, an attachment to the things that are seemingly limiting you. We get attached to it, and that makes it so hard to break out of it, because attachments are difficult to break. Now let's go back a little bit, because I spoke about the limitation and the blocks, but let's define what a belief even is. And I actually looked this up for this video to give more context. So according to the Oxford Dictionary, a belief is an acceptance that something exists or is true, especially if there is no proof, or trust, faith, and confidence in someone or something. Now, these definitions are important because beliefs are not facts. That's what you see here. Beliefs are not rooted in facts. A belief is what you accept as true, despite not having proof that it actually is. If you had proof, it wouldn't be a belief. It would just be fact. It would just be reality. So when you believe something, it's just because you accept it as true, not because you actually know it's true. You just believe that it is. Now, how do beliefs actually develop? Beliefs come from experience and external programming. So a lot of people say beliefs are just thoughts that are repeated often enough. And sometimes that's true because through repetition, of course, you have an experience. The more something is repeated, the more you experience it as true. But more than anything else, beliefs are shaped through experience. If you've experienced being cheated on or betrayed your entire life, and that's actually what's been happening, you can tell yourself the thought that that's not true a million times. Even other people can tell you that, and there might be a part of your consciousness that has a more positive attitude, but your experience is what shapes your belief more than anything. Because you can never forget the pain that that caused you to be betrayed and have your trust broken. And so you're gonna be a lot more discerning, which isn't always a bad thing, but you might also be very distrusting and not as open to new experiences and people as you may like to be. And to kind of illustrate that beliefs are really based on external programming and the experiences that you make, imagine you just came into this world. When you came into this world, you didn't have any beliefs. You had to build them. You had to create them first. Now, you didn't create them through thought, because when you were a baby, depending on how you were treated, that had an impact on you already, even when you didn't understand a word of what was said to you, because you could read the energy. You could tell when your caregiver was not paying attention to you or was neglecting you, even if you couldn't conceptualize it, even if you didn't have the thought that went along with it. As a baby, you experience through feeling. And so you have a certain expectation. Of course, as a baby, you're a lot more malleable, and so you're a lot more forgiving and you're more present, but these beliefs are still shaped over time through the experiences that you make, and only to a lesser extent through thought and mindset. Now, as a baby who has just come into this world, you're gonna discover everything from scratch. You don't come here with any preconceived notions or ideas of how things are, or what to expect, or what you're gonna experience. You don't know what is right or wrong, or true or untrue. All the beliefs that you now have are beliefs that you developed or accepted over time through various things, through the environment you grew up in, and that includes things that people told you or that you observed, through the experiences that you made in your upbringing. That could, for example, be neglect from caregivers. It could be inconsistent love. Of course, it can also be positive things. It could also be the belief that there is always enough because you grew up with always having enough. But also what influences your beliefs is your culture, the society you're in, and the media. So if these beliefs that you now have developed over time, and they weren't part of the whole package, meaning you, when you came into this world, you bet you can change them. As a little side note I want to add on, a belief is not an assumption. They're often used interchangeably, and they do have some overlap as to how they're used in your consciousness or how they manifest in your consciousness. But beliefs are not assumptions because beliefs have conviction. Beliefs are difficult to change because they're certainty. They're very rigid. Whereas an assumption is more like a theory. It's more like a hypothesis. You're open to it being proven wrong. Now, when it comes to manifestation, you don't necessarily need conviction that something is true, but it can definitely help. And especially if you have some limiting beliefs already that are very solid, because beliefs tend to be very rigid and challenging to change, whereas an assumption is a lot more flexible. Whilst you don't necessarily have to have full belief or conviction that something is going to happen, if you have the opposite belief, then that's going to cause issues for you to accept what you want to believe, to accept the possibility or even the reality of what you want to experience or what you want to come true or who you want to be. Now the very important part, how do you change your beliefs? Now the biggest thing here is the subconscious mind. Beliefs are often deeply rooted in your subconscious because they were built over time. This is why it's not as simple as just thinking a different thought. Again, mindset work is helpful. It's not the answer. You need to take a lot more of a holistic approach if you want to see long-lasting results and deep changes in your identity, your self-concept. If you want to experience a transformation of how you see the entire world and yourself and your desires for long to come, not just what you're currently wanting to manifest. So there are also conscious beliefs, which will be the values that you know you stand by, the beliefs that you know they're unshakable, and those are the beliefs that are easy to change. If there are beliefs that you're choosing where you're like, well, I believe it is unethical to torture animals, that is also a belief that's shaped on experience, that's shaped on your compassion, that's shaped on maybe you having observed an animal being hurt and it made you realize this is not okay, but that is still a belief that you're choosing because that is a principle that you stand by. No one here will convince you otherwise, or it's going to be very hard because it's based on your value system. And these also don't tend to be, they can be, but they don't tend to be beliefs that are limiting or restrictive. They tend to be more beliefs that expand you and that make you more authentic and a more loving person. Because behind beliefs like this, there's often a purpose and therefore an intention of bettering the world. Again, doesn't always have to be the case. Some people have principles that are maybe not very healthy, but most of the time. But there also tend to be beliefs that are not very conscious. And those subconscious beliefs tend to be the ones that are limiting us, primarily because we're not fully aware of them. And I see all the time that people think they're aware of all of their beliefs. I speak to so many people every day in my Instagram DMs. And by the way, if you're on Instagram and you've never messaged me there before, feel free to reach out. I truly love connecting with you and learning more about where you're at on your journey. But I speak to so many people there every day pretty much. And every time one of them has become a client, they would have told me in DMs previously, oh, I know my limiting belief is this. I know this is the belief I struggle with. I just don't know how to change it. And whilst there is a lot of awareness, and if you've been on this journey for a while and you've been on this path for a while and you've done a lot of inner work already, you probably have a lot of awareness when it comes to your limiting beliefs. But every time when one of them becomes a client and we dive into it, there's a lot more beliefs underneath the initial belief that they were attaching to or that they were conscious of already. So you may not be as aware of your subconscious beliefs as you think you are. And I'm also speaking from experience here because I have been doing this work for many years now, and I still uncover new things. And it's expansive for me because I know how to shift it, but it doesn't end. There's so much. The subconscious is such a vast world. And even after doing it for years and years, teaching this, coaching so many people through their own belief shifts and having done it for myself and having received support or coaching myself, I still uncover things. So there are likely beliefs that you don't even know you're walking around with. And these can be generic beliefs about the world or other people. So it could be something as simple as there are no good men out there, or success is reserved for good-looking people. I'm just making random things up here. Now, because they might be unconscious, that doesn't mean that you walk around saying these things. These statements may ring true when somebody else says them. So somebody else might say that and you would never say that. Something in your system resonates with that statement, but ultimately you will feel them more than you say them, which is why feeling is more important in this context than thought, because feeling is coming from your subconscious. That will be your subconscious and your nervous system reacting in a way. So these types of beliefs can present themselves more through your behavior and the actions you take, or sometimes through unconscious talk. So things you say unconsciously or that just slip out. So with the examples I gave, you may unconsciously talk down on people who have achieved success in their lives, or you may unconsciously talk negatively about men or generalize men. Or in terms of behavior, maybe you send your friend memes about being single forever when actually you want a relationship. But because you have this background show of there are no good men out there, these are the behaviors that you act from. Now, obviously, these two examples, these two statements that I've given, are very obvious beliefs. They're easy for you to figure out, but it can also be incredibly subtle. And that's where it gets so tricky. So most of the beliefs you're walking around with, you will not be aware of because it's unconscious behaviors. So the goal is, of course, to make the unconscious conscious. And there are two ways to do this. Firstly, you can catch yourself. You can become very aware of what you're saying, thinking, and doing in each moment. Now, that's how most people approach it. It's like awareness through the day, awareness in meditation. These are things that I encourage you to do, and it's freaking exhausting to do it all the time. And it's also pretty impossible because you have to be present and live your life. Please live your life. If you constantly have to check your thoughts or have to think about what you're doing or feeling or saying, it can burn you out. It can get too exhausting. It definitely has for me in the past. Now, the other way is what I teach my clients and what I coach my clients through. And that's a method that I have created that is unique to what I am teaching, but it works with the body. It's about bringing these unconscious patterns and beliefs and emotions up through somatic experience, through the body, through the subconscious mind, and that only really works with guidance. And the good thing about that is that you don't need to think about it all the time. You don't need to keep your mind in check. You don't need to worry about whether you're thinking or feeling the wrong thing. You get to become aware of it. You get to make it conscious simply through the internal experience and bringing the internal experience up, which is why the work that I'm doing is something I'm so proud of and that has been so powerful and so transformative for my clients. Because a lot of them come from a background of trying or managing their mind, and the shift is evident when they experience the changes on a subconscious level because we brought up these limiting beliefs and behaviors and emotions through the body and through the nervous system and through the subconscious. Now, the beliefs I mentioned earlier, the two very simple examples, were general beliefs about other people, right? Or about the public. But the most important beliefs to change are beliefs about yourself. The most important beliefs to tackle are the ones that are connected to your identity, your self-concept. Because your self-concept impacts the potential that you're able to fulfill. And that's why your beliefs about yourself have the biggest impact, because they are part of your self-concept. If you've been here for a while, you probably know this, but if not, I like repeating it, that your self-concept is how you feel about yourself, how you perceive yourself, and the beliefs that you have about yourself, and ultimately how you show up in the world, the behaviors you have, the actions you take, and the whole energy you walk around with, and the desires that are possible for you. So the reason these beliefs are so important is because if your belief is, I am not worthy, you're not going to be very magnetic when you walk around on the street. You're going to be closed off because it doesn't feel safe to be received by others. With that belief of not being worthy, it brings up a whole bunch of other assumptions and beliefs like, I'm going to be rejected, nobody likes me, and so on. There's often like a root belief, and then there's like these branches that come from that belief, these branches of other beliefs. Oh, I never worded it like that. So yes, so it's like a tree, and that's the core belief that you have underneath, and then you have these branches, which the branches are likely the beliefs that you notice or that you're aware of, and the core belief is likely the one that not only you might not be aware of, but even if you are, that's the one that's really difficult to change. The magic is, when you do change that core belief, all of the branches will change too. Now, to give another example that is not as connected to your self-worth or your worthiness. If your belief is, I am not good at public speaking, then you might be super prepared for the work presentation that you have and you still stumble over your words. That's because unconsciously you go into this with the assumption that you'll fail. And so likely it turns into a self-fulfilling prophecy and you will. All limiting beliefs are a self-fulfilling prophecy that keep you from manifesting your desires and becoming who you want to be and stepping into the future that you want to experience. Now let's get a bit more tangible as to how to change your beliefs. So first of all, because beliefs have developed over time, the reprogramming of it is also something that happens over time. It does take time. Now, it doesn't take nearly as long as it took to establish the limiting beliefs, right? Because sometimes you've been carrying limiting beliefs for maybe decades. For example, I reprogrammed some of my most core wounding that I had carried for 25 years. I reprogrammed that in the time span of 1 or 2 years. So it still took time, but obviously it didn't take 2 decades. Now, I know you may want this to happen overnight, but I want to be honest about this. It will take time, and this is why my approach and my method that I teach my clients, I do condense it into 12 weeks so they get to work through it on their own time, even when we stop working together, if they don't choose to continue. But ultimately, the reprogramming itself takes time. I often have people who go through massive transformations through their time in working with me in just a few weeks, but more so than that, and what's more important for me is that they often come back a year later and they have shifted even more, and the beliefs that they changed in the beginning or the shifts that they made in the beginning have really integrated and landed and are now part of who they are. So the long-term results are what really matters. And in order to achieve long-term results and not go back and forth, you need to accept that it will take time. Now, with the right method and the right approach, you can collapse time. So this is not an excuse to keep doing what you've been doing if that hasn't been working and that hasn't been bringing you further forward or helping you progress as much as you would like. Because I see this in a lot of people too, where they essentially just sit around and wait for change and consume information and just hope that saying enough affirmations and meditating enough will just magically shift them. So don't fall for that trap. But when you really do the work, it will still take time. That's what I'm talking about. It's also that the reprogramming, the true reprogramming, that's not surface level, that's not short-lived, that happens in the body. That doesn't just happen in your mind. That's very important too. Aside from the fact that, as I mentioned, just working on your mindset all the time can be pretty exhausting. Now, given that I said earlier that your limiting beliefs or your beliefs overall have been shaped through experience, that means when you want to change your beliefs, you better also do this through experience. Now, you cannot force the circumstances around you. You cannot wait for your circumstances to change so that you can have new beliefs. You need to go for the new beliefs before your circumstances change, right? So if that is the case, how do you create the experience without relying on external circumstances? Now, there are 3 points to this. Number 1, it's actions and behaviors. So you need to act in alignment with the version of you that you want to become, with the beliefs that you want to embody. For example, if you want to have the belief that money is always abundant and there is always enough for you and your income is exponentially growing, but you never make investments in yourself, you never spend money, you have a tendency to hold on to money and cling on to it, you're not acting in alignment with that belief. Through your action, you're then reaffirming to yourself that you're in lack, no matter how often you tell yourself that you're abundant, because your actions and what you're saying don't line up. It's like when you're in a relationship with somebody and they treat you but they tell you that they love you. Well, that doesn't freaking count, does it, if they don't act like it? Or maybe you want to embody the belief that you're worthy, but you don't trust yourself and you don't make decisions that show you that you matter and that you choose yourself. Then you just keep reaffirming to yourself that you're not important, that you don't matter, that you don't choose yourself, that other things are more important. Speaking of, this is also about choices. So ask yourself where you are making disempowering choices, rather than choices that put you in alignment with the beliefs that you wish to embody. I kind of mix the 2 points into one, so you only get one more. The other point, how to create the experience, is through the internal experience. And what I'm speaking about is the somatic and embodied experience. So that's embodiment. Embodiment meaning about who you are being, who you're becoming. Now, that's not just practicing feeling into something. I see a lot of people practicing embodiment work sometimes through movement, which is great, but often in the manifestation space, I see people just meditating on a feeling or trying to feel into something through just internal focus. That's again not a bad thing to do. If that's fun for you, keep doing it. It can't hurt. But if you want a long-lasting shift in your embodiment and ultimately in your consciousness, this is more about a process of integration over time. what I always tell my clients when they begin working with me is that they'll experience a shift at some point throughout the program, and it always happens in one way or another, where they become a new version of themselves and they didn't even try. And this is a magical thing, and this is because of the process that I teach them, which is based on steps or processes that build upon one another, so that often when we get to the portion where they get to practice an embodiment that they want to step into, they are already there because they have peeled off the layers of the opposite over time. And so they got to embody a new version of themselves without even having to try. And that's really what you want to get to. You don't want to get to a point where you constantly need to practice. You want to get to a point where it just becomes who you are. Now, I hope you enjoyed this, and I would love to know from you. Please leave a comment. What is a belief that you are working on embodying or stepping into? What belief do you want to have about yourself or your life going forward? Let me know, and I'll see you in next week's video.